Live. All right, welcome everybody. Those who are on our Zoom platform and on Facebook Live. We have an interesting topic today. We're going to talk about defective materials. I was going to say, let's talk turkey and happy Thanksgiving. I know it's this week. Hopefully everybody's getting prepared for that, but this is our last webinar for this month. In fact, next month, we're not having a webinar, we're having a holiday party, and more about that later. So we're here, Martin Pea, Lance Luke, National Building Expert, Ask the Building Expert webinar series. We're here to give you some factual information about building materials. And if you have any questions or comments, just feel free to post them on Zoom or on the Facebook platform. And this webinar is presented by Construction Management Inspection, which is a company that I own that does building inspection, consulting, construction management for almost any type of construction project. So let's get right into it. Defective building materials, how to identify, how do you know if your house or the building that you live in has defective building materials? So we're going to talk about the various types of materials and hopefully what to look for, how to identify it, and that kind of thing. And a lot of people don't know this, even contractors. So glad you're here. So the first thing is beware of the dangers. Some of the building materials are so bad that it becomes very dangerous. And I'm talking about lead paint and asbestos mainly, but we'll talk more about that as we go through the webinar. Doors, windows, and glass. Did you know that the materials that comprise of construction of doors, windows, and even glass could be defective? Well, let's talk about doors here. These are pictures of brand new doors. And as you can see on the left, the door has split along in a vertical fashion along the edge of the door, and somebody just caulked it. By the way, this door is in a condo, and so the entry door of a condominium is a hallway, is considered a fire door. So any kind of crack or hole or anything compromises the integrity of the fire rating of the door. So that's something to be aware of. And then if you look at the photo on the right, this is a brand new door. And if you look at the different colors, it's not supposed to be all these different colors. It's supposed to be fairly uniform, unless you like the different wood look. But anyway, that's considered a defect. So doors can be defective. If it's a fire rated door, make sure it has the metal label on the edge of the door, and it's usually at the hinge side. And it says what kind of rating, fire rating, 20-minute, 1 hour, or whatever. If it does not have that label, or if it's painted over, technically the door is not considered fire rated. Okay, so be careful. Usually exterior doors are solid core, and interior doors could be solid or hollow core. Now let's talk about windows. Okay, you could have a brand new window installed in your house or condo, and the first or second time it rains, guess what? The window would fog up, and later on when it's sunny, you still see the fog in between the two panes, okay? Or you see water on your windowsill. Now, that's not a good sign. That means your window leaks, okay? So is something wrong with the window itself, or is something wrong with the caulking or the window assembly. And that's for a contractor or engineer to investigate. Now, there's issues with the glass itself. There's many condos, new condos, and high-rise condos, and they're built, and what happens is it's either noisy or the glass cracks on its own spontaneously, maybe from heat or vibration, and that's considered defective. A lot of them are made in China, and when they made the glass, they didn't adhere to the proper specifications. So it could be that the mixture, all the chemicals to make the glass wasn't the right proportion, or maybe the glass is too thin, or some other factor. Remember, the glass itself has to withstand wind, rain, chemicals, and that kind of thing. If it doesn't, then it could be a problem. So there's certain specifications that need to be followed when glass is manufactured and a window is made from that glass. Okay, so there's also safety glass versus non-safety. In the old days, all the windows were single pane, non-safety glass. If it cracked, it leaves sharp pieces of glass. And that's because back then the code did not require safety glass. And we're talking, in the 40s and the 50s. But as the future went on, people became more aware of the safety issue with glass, and the code required certain types of glass, including safety glass. Okay. Safety glass is when it cracks, it doesn't leave shards or sharp pieces of glass. It kind of crumbles and it does not become sharp. It's sort of like the glass on a windshield of a car. When that cracks, it's not sharp. So more about glass. You see cracks in the window pane, and there's a brand new building in Hawaii, in Honolulu and Kaka'ako, called Waiea. They had problems with their glass and other things, and they're in the process of getting all their glass replaced. Now, what's the problem? The problem is there were different sounds, vibrations, and weird noises over time that the unit owners experienced coming from the windows. And in the beginning, nobody could figure out what was wrong. And then later on, they hired engineers to investigate, and come to find out the whole window assembly was defective for one reason or the other that required replacement. Was no way to fix it. And normally it's a thermal thing. When the window's facing west and it gets a lot of heat during the afternoon time, that's when there's expansion of the window frame and the glass. And of course, when building material contracts and expands, it tends to move, and then the vibration, the glass is rigid, right? It's not like putty where it can move. So any kind of change, even the settlement of the building, could cause the glass to move, either crack or make noise and that kind of thing. So you're probably going to hear more about that as time goes on high-rise buildings, not only in Hawaii, but throughout the United States. Let's talk about wood siding and roofing. And by the way, thank you those who are attending who are not from Hawaii or not even in the United States. You could be from some foreign countries, and these same issues apply in different countries. I don't know to what degree, because I really didn't do my research in different countries, but my research mainly was limited to the United States, but I'm aware of similar problems in different countries regarding some of these building components. So wood siding and roofing. Let's talk about wood siding first. Have you ever looked at a house or a townhouse building, wood frame, and they had wood siding. Of course, it's painted, and you looked at the siding, and it looked like it was rotted. Okay, it had wood rot, and if you look at the photos, you can see usually at the bottom edge where it's cut, and it may not be painted or the paint wore off. Now the edge becomes a drip edge, and because the material that was manufactured, uh, they call it manufactured wood. It's not real solid wood. It's made of composite, um, maybe fiberglass, maybe wood fibers, sawdust mixed in with resin and formed into a shape of a wood panel. Okay, and that's called hardboard siding, and it's not solid wood. And in the beginning, all the manufacturers got sued on a class action lawsuit because it was determined that all their siding failed when exposed to the weather, such as sun, wind, rain, mostly rain. When it got wet, it acted like cardboard, and it soaked up the water, and it expanded and started cracking. So if you see that, and there's buildings that are up today that still have this siding. It's just been painted over or spot repaired. And I like to call it cardboard siding because it acts as like cardboard. It doesn't withstand, it never lasted. And the brand names could be LP, Louisiana Pacific, Masonite. Masonite siding was a well-known brand that was extensively used in the 70s on single-family houses and townhouses. Now in Hawaii, Kai, Mililani, single-family houses and townhouses use this type of siding, and it's all subject to failure. You got to keep it painted, and even when you keep it painted, it still rots, so you have to replace it. And now, there's all types of wood siding or composite siding that's made out of all different materials. There's numerous brands out there, and it's been tested, and they say, no rot, free from termites and all this stuff. But we'll see. Okay, time will tell, because it may not have been tested for long periods of time. Certainly it didn't come out in the 70s, and it has been on a house all these years, and then you could say, well, our product doesn't fail. Now, there's laboratories that they can do accelerated testing and shoot water on the panels and all that, and that's what these manufacturers have done, and it's going through different types of testing to determine how long it's going to last, and does it withstand strong winds or heavy rain or acid rain and that kind of thing. Now, Florida is probably closest to the climate of Hawaii, but when I see brand new building materials that say ours is the best, and I tell them what conditions has it been tested under, and similar to Hawaii, they say, well, Florida was a testing site. And I said, okay, well, that's pretty good, but has it been tested for against VOG? And they're like confused. Well, what do you mean? I said, if you took your product and you built a house with your product near a volcano that emitted gases from the volcano, is your product gonna stand up? And they're like, well, we don't know. It wasn't tested for that. I said, well, then don't say it can be used in Hawaii, because you don't know for sure. And then they're like, oh, well, back to the drawing boards then, and we'll see what we can do. So that's wood siding. And there's a bunch of different brand names that were used, but if it's pretty much looking like cardboard or subject to rot because it's not solid wood, then it could be any brand. But if you're in Hawaii, the most common brand was Masonite and Louisiana Pacific type brand, because that's what was shipped over to Hawaii during those times. Now, roofing, remember I talked to you about the siding that was composite wood, it wasn't solid wood? The same with roofing. Okay, so they made the roofing shingles pretty much the same way. It's molded to look like a wood, solid wood shingle, cedar shingle or shake. And it, from far away, it looked like real wood, but it's actually manufactured wood. They mix sawdust and ground up, uh, small bits of lumber with resin and other kind of chemicals, and they form it. So when it's put on the roof, it looks like uh, a genuine wood roof. But if you look closely, it's not. And what's the problem with that? The problem is the same way with the siding. It's easily rotted. When it gets wet, it doesn't last. Okay. And when it first got installed, it was, the wood look. You like the beautiful wood look, the grain and everything. But because of that, there was no protection. So people started painting it later, and then it looked even uglier. Now, there's different brand names: Wood Rough, Chemwood, it's CEMWOOD, and then there's other brand names. Now, there's also a manufacturer who made flat wood shingles that didn't look rough, like rough sawn lumber for cedar shake or shingles, and it looked flat like the photo on the right. But look what happened. The edges start getting worn, and then it's like, if you cut cardboard and you expose it to water, guess what? The end starts curling and swelling up, and that's what happened, with these bad roof shingles. So this is all defective material. The siding was defective, the roofing's defective, and then what do? Imagine having siding, which is the protection layer of your house or building, deteriorate and get wood rot. Okay, imagine the same thing happening with your roof. Now, no wonder roofs leaked, and because of these conditions. Now, when you have your roof, who's supposed to protect the top of your house, start rotting, and then rain starts coming in, that's not a very good sign. So, does your house have that? We don't know. It has to be checked out. Sometimes it's hard to tell. Got to take a sample out and analyze it. Sometimes it's very easy to tell. Okay. Most times for me, when I go on the roof, I can tell right away whether it's composite type roofing or not. And when it is, I just have to flag it and tell the owner, this is a bad roof. I think you should replace it as soon as you can. Now, what other building materials are defective besides doors, windows, siding, and roofing? How about electrical? Did you know that there's bad electrical circuit breaker panel boxes and circuit breakers? Okay. Most people, when you have your electrical installed, you think, yeah, nothing could be wrong, right? It works fine. But there's several brand names which are proven historically by testing and just callbacks, but it wasn't so bad where it was a recall. In my opinion, it should have been recalled, but politics got in the way, and these manufacturers kind of, got away with it. So the first brand name is FPE, stands for Federal Pacific Electric, and it's the specific stab lock, STABLOK. And that's been known to fail. And when I say fail, I mean that when you have an overload, the breaker does not trip. What is a circuit breaker for? The circuit breaker is supposed to break the circuit. So if there's an overload or short, that circuit breaker will trip and cut the power off. Okay. Now, what happens when you have an overload or you have a short circuit or something and the breaker doesn't trip? what happens is there's still electricity in the wire, and the circuit breaker is not stopping the circuit. And what happens, the arcing occurs and fires start. So not really a good condition. Okay, so remember, Federal Pacific Electric Stab Lock. And that brand was commonly used in single family houses and also condominium buildings built in the 60s and 70s. Okay. Another brand is Zinsco, Zinsco, and it's similar to the Federal Pacific Electric, where if there's a short, the breaker does not trip. So now you have a breaker that's still live with power going into the breaker box, starting a fire. Okay, so those two, remember those brands, and it's wise to get an electrician to check it out and see if there's a problem, or just replace the box knowing that that brand is on the list of bad defective materials for electrical. Also, you have aluminum wiring. Now, I put aluminum wiring in the defective building material category only because the aluminum wire is different from copper. It has different characteristics. Copper is a better conductor of electricity. Aluminum, the size of the wire has to be one size larger than the copper in order to carry the electrical. And what happened with these branch wiring? In branch wiring, I'm talking about your wires to your electrical outlets and your light switches. Those are 15 and 20 amp circuits. Okay, what happens is the aluminum wiring corrodes easier than copper, and it also heats up faster. And there have been cases of fires that were started because of aluminum wiring. What happens too is that the screw that holds the wire into the device may get corroded or may get loose, and then when it gets loose and there's no contact, the electricity has to go somewhere, and that's what arcing is all about. Arcing is the electricity jumping at the end of the wire to something else because it doesn't have a termination connection. So if you're interested in more information on aluminum wiring, just go on a search engine such as Google and type in aluminum wiring fires or defects with aluminum wiring, and you're going to see probably millions of pages being written up about the aluminum wiring. Aluminum wiring was used in the 60s and 70s. They stopped using it in the 80s because they needed the aluminum when the war was going on. They also needed copper too, but I think because copper was being used more extensively for war products such as bullet casing and that kind of thing, aluminum was the wiring that was available, and that's what was used. So similar to siding, houses in Mililani and Hawaii Kai and Hawaii, I've seen a lot of aluminum wiring, not only in single family houses, but in townhouses as well. So it's not safe in my mind. So if your house has aluminum wiring, you may want to have an electrician check all the connections. And when I say connections, that means when the wire is cut, it's terminated at something. It's terminated at an outlet, it's terminating at a light fixture, it's terminating in a light switch, see? So anytime that wire is cut and connected to something, that's where you need to check. Sometimes in the photo on the left, this is a circuit breaker panel that's a ground bus bar. And if you see the copper wiring and then on the right aluminum, that's not a very good situation because aluminum and copper are dissimilar metals and it's subject to corrosion. So eventually all these screw terminals are going to get corroded, and then the connection is going to be not 100%, which is not a very good situation for electrical in the house. Okay, so corrosion is another factor in aluminum wiring. Now let's talk about lead paint and asbestos. Lead paint, as you know, is a problem, especially with children. Okay, once the lead enters your body, it doesn't leave. So for small kids to ingest lead in the paint, um, it doesn't leave the body. It stays in the body, and then it creates a condition called lead poisoning. And asbestos is the same way. Um, it stays in your body, and it could poison your body. Asbestos has these tiny fibers that get stuck in a human lung, and it doesn't leave. It's a small little kind of fiberglass thing. Asbestos is actually uh, a mineral from the earth, and lead also. Okay, but what happens is the manufacturers use lead to mix in with the paint because it made the paint last longer. And asbestos was used because it was considered a fire rated material. So they mix the asbestos minerals in with drywall and other materials such as fluorine and all that, which at that time nobody knew it was hazardous. And then, recently, that's why the realtors know, and it's in the contract documents, that any house built prior to 1977-78 may contain lead paint and asbestos. Asbestos could be used in roofing, drywall, joint compound, pipe lagging, which is insulation around piping, flooring, these 9x9 floor tiles, caulking around your window frames. It could be used in concrete mixture. There's a panel similar to drywall called transite, which has asbestos containing material in it. So I consider these defective and very hazardous. It's hazardous to health. Now the siding and roofing isn't as bad as lead paint and asbestos because it really doesn't affect your health unless mold starts growing out and then you get sick from the mold. So lead paint, I talked about that, especially for young kids. They play outside and you got chips of paint in the ground, mixed in the ground, and they're touching the soil and then now touching their mouth and ingesting the lead paint. Asbestos, even today, is a problem. So if you don't disturb it, it's okay. But once you start disturbing it, or it gets like if you have popcorn ceiling and the asbestos gets water damage, okay, now you have a problem. And it needs to be removed based on the percentage of damage. Okay, but it needs to be fixed nonetheless. Now let's talk about plumbing piping. Remember I talked about lead paint? The same material could be in piping. You have galvanized steel, copper pipe, and then you have lead pipes made out of lead. In the old days, the plumbing piping were made out of lead because you could mold it and it's easy to shape and bend it and all that. But at the time, nobody knew that the lead was hazardous. That's why you got cities that you have millions of linear feet of lead piping, and the children and the people are getting sick because it mixes in with the drinking water. Okay, so that's still going on today throughout the United States. Also, PVC, vinyl chloride, which is a plastic piping. It's defective because in the early days they were using the PVC for fire sprinkler piping, and there was a tendency for leakage. Also, the standard PVC piping, if it's in a fire, you don't want to be breathing a burnt PVC because there's chemicals in it. It's like, have you ever smelled burnt plastic? That's kind of the same thing. You know that you're breathing chemicals. So that's another defective building material. I think today they've kind of manufactured and got the chemical analysis correct. So it may not be as defective as it was in the past. Okay. Now, continuing on with plumbing piping, have you heard of PEX piping? You know, there's different brand names, Uponor, Zern, and what happened is the connectors that's made out of and zinc and brass. Okay, and so you have two sections of plastic pipe. You want to connect it together. There's a metal connector made out of zinc and brass to connect the two sections of pipe together. What happened was, in the beginning, it was determined that the hot water side, because of the temperature, caused the metal connector to prematurely deteriorate and corrode. And through testing, it's been found that the content of the metal had the wrong percentages of zinc and brass. And believe it or not, there's actually a code requirement that dictates the percentage of each type. And it was proven to be wrong in the manufacturing, and that's what caused a prematurely failure, mainly on the hot water side. Okay, so can you imagine a high-rise building being plumbed out with millions of linear feet of this plastic piping, and all the connectors are failing or subject to fail? How do you know where it is in your wall? You have to cut out your walls, cut out your ceilings, and find the piping and pull it all out and repipe. Or how do you fix it, right? How do you know where all the connections are? It's kind of hard to tell. So that's why it costs so much on a high-rise building to repipe, especially if it has, you know, this kind of failed piping. And if you do your research in Hawaii, there's high-rise buildings that have PEX piping that have been retrofitted, and there's some that have not, but they ended up settling for like a 25-year warranty. If there's any leaks, then the developer would send the plumbing contractor out to repair it. Now there's thousands of houses in the United States, like Las Vegas and Arizona and other areas, where they plumb the single-family houses with PEX piping. A lot of them have been replaced already because of the failure of the connectors. Yeah, in some cases, the plastic even ruptures or cracks, or just doesn't do its job. So that's the plumbing as a defective building product. Now let's talk about hurricane ties. Hurricane ties, as you know, are these metal connectors. If you look at the photo on the right, that's a hurricane tie. It connects the top roof rafter with the bottom plate. And so in case of a hurricane, the roof doesn't blow off. Okay, it's still connected to the house. And then on the left, you have this anchor bolt, which is in the shape of a J. And construction-wise, when they form the concrete slab, and I'm talking about a single-family house or a condo, okay, before they pour the slab, they put these anchor bolts in. So when they pull the form out and you have a concrete slab there, you have these little anchor bolts that are exposed at the top of the slab, okay, and then they make a hole in the wood sill plate that's installed over, okay, that little piece of anchor, and then bolted down. Okay, now there was a company, Simpson Strong Tie, where I guess during the manufacturing there was an issue, and the bolts were prematurely corroding, cracking the concrete, causing spalling and all that. So there was a big class action lawsuit out in Ocean Point regarding hurricane ties and the anchor bolts. And that got settled by remedial work being done. So that's another defective building material. There's a bunch of other ones that I didn't cover. I tried to make a list of the top building materials that I thought would be important to you. There's also recently drywall or gypsum wallboard. On the mainland, it's called sheetrock. Why is it called sheetrock? Well, the drywall comes in 4x8 sheets, right? And it's hard like a rock. And the gypsum material is actually from rocks. Okay, now there's what's called Chinese drywall, which is to me not a good term, because how can drywall be Chinese, right? It should have been instead of drywall, it should have been instead of Chinese drywall, drywall from China, because that's where it came from. So what happens is you have these cheaper drywall panels that came from China that when it arrived, it already was a problem. There was an odor to it. It smelled bad. It didn't perform correctly. Mold started growing on it and all that. So it was considered defective. Many houses basically had to be redone because of this drywall. So I think pretty much the government identified where it came from, what the shipments were, and all that. And I think that problem's been corrected now. But there's also other building products from other countries that have failed, and there is a list, right? So just be aware. Case studies, failures, lawsuits. There's a bunch like on the plumbing, on the PEX piping. There's high-rise buildings that have redone their plumbing because of the failure of the connections, the connectors on the PEX piping. One of them is Hokua. I think that was the very first building that had to be replumbed. Right after that, there was Ko'olani. It's another high-rise building in Kaka'ako where they replaced their PEX piping. And then Moana Pacific, who is two towers on Pi'ikoi Street, they did not replace theirs. Instead, I heard they opted for a settlement of an additional warranty, which I don't think is a good idea. But what happens after the 25 years is over and then you have a leak, then it's tough luck for them, right? And it's going to cost millions of dollars to replumb the building. Also, there were class action lawsuits on siding and roofing. Every manufacturer got involved in a lawsuit, and it was determined that their product failed, and there's really nothing you can do to fix it. It just had to be replaced. So the people who opted in on a settlement at the time, they got some money back from as a result of the class action lawsuit. And the people who did not participate, they're out of luck. And there's many condo associations that didn't even know about the lawsuit, and then they missed the time period. So once the court says you have this date to file a claim or you're forever barred, and there's no claim filed now, they can't go back. So guess what? They have to use their own money to fix the problem because they didn't know. So conclusion from the building expert, I would say be aware of what products are in your house, what products have been used to construct your house or your building, and then determine whether it's a problem or not. If it's not a problem, then nothing to worry about. Okay. Now, what you missed, we've given probably 2 years worth of webinars on different building and construction issues, from the building code, contractor licensing, roofing, water infiltration, windows, what to do when you're buying a new building and the developer's turning it over to you, construction defects, asphalt, concrete spalling, hurricane ties. I mean, we've given probably at least 20 webinars per year. So it's probably continuation. So if you have any topics of interest that you want us to consider, let us know and we'll be able to maybe make a webinar or do a pop-up if we don't have it scheduled. What's coming up is we have probably at least 20, 22 different topics that we're going to talk about. The schedule is already on our website, and you can register for probably at least half of them now up through probably June of next year. And briefly, I'll go over the topics. We have major skyscrapers in the world. How long does it last? This is has to do with the lifespan of building materials, fire code inspections, ancient buildings in Italy. I just came back 2 weeks ago from Italy, and I took a bunch of pictures of nice buildings that I'm going to talk about. Why is my electric bill so high? That applies to Hawaii mainly. DPP, why is my building permit taking so long? Emergency generators, climate change, global warming, is it real or fake news? Condo board errors. Condo lawsuits, there's trouble in paradise. That's going to be a heads up. The 7 stages of construction. Then after that, another webinar, 14 types of building structure components. And then Aloha Stadium, from rust to dust. Next, the real estate development process. I'll be talking about how these big kaka'ako buildings get built. Water damage, mold, flood remediation, construction defect litigation cases. Renovation is no vacation. That one mainly is if you're doing renovation of your single family house or remodeling of your condo unit, you might want to take that in. Real estate seller disclosure. Here's one where I'm going out of the building and construction industry format and talking about real estate, but this is one that affects me a lot when I'm doing inspection of houses, and realtors call me all the time. That's going to be another eye opener. And then international residential code, cliff dwelling construction, and then a couple more toward the end of next year, the rail, the big, bad, the ugly, and then Red Hill, the big Navy blunder. By the time I talk about that, we're probably going to be like 2 years into the problem. And then, of course, there's a holiday party. Speaking of holiday party, we're giving a holiday party December 20th here using our Zoom platform. And you're welcome to attend. It's free. And last year, Martin and I gave away about $1,000 in gift cards. So you have to be present to win, of course. And that's going to be only on our Zoom platform. If you're on Facebook, you won't be able to play the game. So if you have any questions, I got answers. My phone number is on the screen, 808-422-2132. Email lanceluke@hawaiibuildingexpert.com. But more importantly, or visit our website, askbuildingexpert.now.site. That is a huge website that Martin and I have put together, mainly Martin, and it has all kinds of stuff in it. It has our listing of webinars that we're going to give for 2023. It has free publications, free books. I just finished writing a book on monster houses. You can get that free. There's a book on how safe is your building. That's up there, as well as repairing your flooded home. We got links to our various websites and a whole bunch of stuff. So visit the website, visit it often. all our webinars are recorded too. So we have all our webinars that you can watch on demand. You don't need a Netflix account, but you may want to get a cold drink and some popcorn and watch one or two, and it's good. All the information is there, free, available, that we're sharing with you. So what else do I have? Let's do the Q&A. I think I talked enough, so bring Martin back and let's see if we got any questions from any of our listeners or watchers.
Yes, Lance, happy Thanksgiving, and thanks for all the great information you shared today. So we do have a few questions, so let me pass them on to you here.
Okay.
First one here is, I am a building manager for several older apartment and condo buildings. What things would I be doing so that I do not get in trouble with the building materials you mentioned?
Well, first of all, you would need to know what type of materials are in your building. So if your building is older, like built prior to 1977, 78, chances are you do have lead paint, you do have asbestos, but the only way to know is to have testing done. There's no way, like, I'm a building expert. There's no way I can go to your building and look at the paint or look at the ceiling or the drywall and say it has asbestos or not. The only way to tell is to take samples and send it to a lab, and they look under a high-powered magnifying glass to see what the content is. That's the only way to tell for sure. So you may want to do that if you haven't done it already. And the heads up on that is, if anybody's doing renovation in the building, you got to let them know, because you don't want a contractor going in and cutting walls or chipping out the ceiling, spreading the lead paint and asbestos, everywhere throughout the unit and tracking out in the common areas and all that. Some even, you're not supposed to, but some contractors take the materials and throw it in the dumpster of the building. And then what happens is now your dumpster is contaminated. The condo building trash dumpster is not contaminated with environmental hazards. So it's not a pretty sight. So good question asking. It's better to be prepared than to suffer the consequences later.
Good answer, Lance. And it kind of brought up a question that I might have. How is whether I'm a residential owner or a condo owner, how do I know what are all the materials that are, that were used in building whether for my home or the condo, like you're saying, I don't know what's all in mine. What would you say to that?
Well, you look at the year the structure was built, the house was built, the condo building was built, and then you go from there. So right off the bat, I could say, if you said my building's built in the 60s, I said, oh, then you probably have lead paint and asbestos right away, but the only way to tell is to test, right? And then if you have a house and your siding is failing, right, or your roofing is failing, and I say, well, have a roofing contractor or general contractor check out the siding and roof and determine what kind of material it is. And those are easier to determine. I can go out there and tell you whether you have hardboard siding or defective roofing. That's easier than, the lead paint or asbestos. So some things some things you don't. On the electrical and plumbing, it's kind of hard to tell without, doing more investigation, at least taking the circuit breaker panel cover off to look at the wiring, seeing what kind of wiring you have. And, there's testing that can be done and different things like that.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. I have another question here that's come in a condo building built in 1972, old one. I have been on the board for over 10 years, and our contractor said outside siding is defective, but it is too late to make a claim on a class action lawsuit. Is that true? And could we file an insurance claim?
Yeah, it is true, because the settlements on all those defective siding with the manufacturers was done years ago and closed out. Once the court certifies class action lawsuit, then they give a time period by which any kind of um, people who are in the class action want to make a claim. And you don't have to be named in the lawsuit. You can just be a participant in making a claim. Now, the court also says that this is a cutoff date, so make your claim by this date. If you do not make your claim by this date, then you're forever barred and you can't make a claim at a later date. So what happens is when the court states that, it's a court decision, right? As part of the class action. Now, you could file your own claim later outside of the class action, but it's probably not gonna get anywhere, right? Because they're just gonna cite the big lawsuit and said, hey, you should have been a party to this, you didn't, so tough luck for you. Or these companies are all out of business. Now, the companies are still in business, like making masonite siding, but that division is closed. So you're suing a non-existing entity, and legally, there's nobody to sue, basically. Okay, so the time has come. Now, as far as the time has come and you're barred, it came and went. Now, concerning the insurance claim, yes, you could make an insurance claim. Will the insurance cover? Probably not. And the reason being is, if you look in the fine print on the insurance, it has to be a one-time occurrence. And this is not a one-time occurrence, because what happens is insurance companies hire people like me to go out and say, oh, Lance, you're the expert. In your opinion, is this a one-time occurrence? Did this thing just happen? Or was it happening, years and years? And my report's going to say the siding is defective and there's rot. Look at the various pictures, and this whole cycle has been going on for 20 years. So once the insurance company gets my report, they're going to go, well, see, this is not a one-time occurrence. It's been happening for the past 20 years. And condo association, you have not maintained it properly. The minute you saw rot, you should have fixed it. So don't expect us to cover your negligence in maintaining your own building. So therefore, there's no claim. Okay, so that's what's normally going to happen. And believe it or not, insurance companies are getting stricter and stricter, raising their premiums because too many claims. And in the old days, they were paying out without doing much investigation. But now they got adjusters and everybody, and they want to basically say, come up with reasons why we shouldn't pay the claim. Okay, so that's the name of the game. So it's like, good luck. Basically, you're on your own. Most likely, the insurance company is not gonna cover, because it's easy to go, it should have been repaired. When was the last time you painted? And if the painting cycle on a wood frame building is 7, 8 to 10 years, and the association says, well, we haven't painted for like 15 years. Oh, okay, well, you're wrong already. So in that respect, don't expect us, the insurance company, to pay because you didn't paint your building when you should have. Okay, insurance is there for a certain reason. Insurance is not there because the condo association or the homeowner wants to be negligent and not fix their building and then file a claim with the insurance company and get money basically for nothing. Okay, so it's getting harder and harder out there. What else we got?
Okay, Lance, thank you. Next question here we have is, how do we go about having our electrical panels and wiring inspected? Do we call someone like you or an electrical contractor?
Either way. I mean, if you contact me, I could do the inspection, also. But I may not be able to give you a good estimate. I could give you a rough estimate. If you call an electrical contractor, he could inspect and he could say, it's going to be, $2,500 to fix this problem. I would just be kind of giving you a rough idea. So if you want a hard number, it's better to get a good number from the electrical contractor. On the other hand, there's people that go, we purposely don't want to call the contractor out because they're trying to get the job. They want to get hired to fix the problem. Whereas somebody like me who's an independent third party, I have no interest in making money to fix the problem. That's why I do a lot of roofing inspections, because the people don't want to call the roofing contractor and get bullied or try to get convinced to sign the contract to fix the roof. They want to know from a third party independent who has no interest in making money on the repairs to give them the facts, the real opinion, and then go from there. So sometimes, I go out and assess the roof or electrical, and then I can refer, contractors to the people. And sometimes they're happy about that because they know that the contractors I refer are ones that I've been working with for a while, and chances are they're going to do a good job and not take advantage of the homeowner.
Thanks, Lance. That's a good strategy too. Yeah, thank you. Okay, we have one last question here that I can see on our Zoom and Facebook, but the question is from a realtor. It says, I'm a realtor and need to disclose if the house I'm selling was or has any defective building materials. Are home inspectors required to let us know? And what if they don't know?
Okay, home inspectors are not required to cite the building code or tell you if something's going to fail in the future. If something is failing currently, they have to flag it and then tell you, hey, your roof is failing, and by the way, this is not real wood shingles, it's composite shingles, and there's been a history of problems, with this type of material. They're supposed to tell you that, but not really go further. If they don't know, then they don't know. But it's good to get as much information as you can, on that specific item. The other thing is, for a seller, the seller should always say and fill out the disclosure statement properly and say the buyer should get their own home inspector or their own experts to determine what the condition of the house is. Now, specific to siding and roofing or plumbing or electrical, if the homeowner knows, if the seller knows, he could say, my siding has rot in it. I never fixed it. You should consult an expert to give you a further opinion, because don't count on mine. I'm a lay person. I'm a school teacher, and I don't know anything about construction, but I'm just telling you that I noticed this. So there's nothing wrong with doing that, because basically you're making the statement that you don't know, and you're recommending the buyer to hire an expert. If you don't say anything, it could come back to haunt you by even a lawsuit where the buyer is saying, "Oh, you didn't tell me this," and the seller could say, "Well, isn't it obvious? This one piece of siding is rotted," and then you're the buyer. Well, it's not obvious to me because I'm an artist. I don't know anything about construction. I know how to paint, murals or whatever. So you never know. And today is very litigious society. If people would sue for anything, you just ask an attorney. You can easily get an attorney, and we don't want to go there, right? That's why there's alternative dispute resolution, such as mediation and arbitration. No one wants to get sued. Nobody wants to go to court. So you want to do your due diligence and do what you can to prevent yourself from getting in that situation. Okay, so anyway, we got any other comments before we close the session?
No, Lance, we're good. Happy Thanksgiving.
Okay, great. Once again, thank you everybody for attending, and be sure if you're interested, December 20th, we have our holiday party here on Zoom. We got games and there's a lot of prizes. Martin has been out shopping for gift cards and various other things. And we decided that if you've been a participant in any one of our Zoom webinars, you're invited. If you've followed us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and any number of other social media platforms, and you liked their posts or you commented on, you're invited. If you're a family of ours or a friend of ours, or consider yourself a friend, or you want to be a friend, you're invited. It's free. And then for those of you who, we already got some people sign up from different countries, Philippines and Italy. And so for those of you who are from foreign countries, I'm sure you're not going to be able to use a Foodland or Safeway gift card, but we thought about you. We got Amazon and other generic cards that you can still use. Okay. Plus that, if you're from Italy or a European country that uses pesos, I still got extra, not pesos, but sorry, that's Philippines. Euros. I still got euros, so you might want to win that too. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, the best is gift cards or cash, right? So anyway, yeah, sign up. We have a seating limitation, so it's first come, first serve. We're gonna have singing, games, and all that. It's gonna be fun. We did it last year. We had so much fun. We're gonna do it this year. I don't know. Martin may even play ukulele. He's supposed to be practicing, but I don't know. He told me that he didn't get to it yet. But we'll see. All right. So on behalf of Martin and myself, Ask the Building Expert, askbuildingexpert.com. We're signing off and hope to see you at the holiday party. If not, we'll hope to see you at a future webinar. Aloha.